Hi, everyone, and welcome to Lund University's International Podcast. So my name is Maria Lindblad, and I work here at Lund University as an international marketing manager, and I'm here today with...
Elliott, hi.
Yeah, hi, Elliott.
I'm a current student here at Lund University, and I study the Bachelor's in Development Studies program.
Nice. Yeah, and today we're welcoming you all to this podcast pilot. We're going to have a series of podcast episodes coming out for you on different topics around Lund University. And today we're going to start with an introduction to student life. Mm-hmm. And Elliott is here as our specialist, very much experiencing the student life, I hope.
Mm-hmm. I am.
Yeah.
And one of the things I actually do in my student life is I work with the UPF Pod and Radio Committee.
All right.
Which is an organization here in Lund. I don't want to dive too fast into it, like we said earlier, but I love the podcast medium. Yeah. And I love being on today. So thank you.
So you're the perfect guest to get us started.
Yeah.
I think. Well, like I said, today is going to be all about student life. So I think, why don't we just start, Elliott, if you could give us a general overview of the student life in Lund. What's it all about?
Yeah.
Just some idea for prospective students out there who might be considering coming to Lund.
Well, Lund University, in all of its campuses, but especially at the Lund campus, has a very diverse range of activities that can be accessed if you're a student here. Yeah. So one of them is the student union. There's a big student union that has a bunch of different activities in it for students. It's housed in the AF Borgen building here in Lund, in the Lundakarnevalen campus. And basically, there are so many different activities. You can get into so many different clubs. If you like theater, you can get into theater clubs. If you like choirs, there's choirs that you can go into. I personally belong to an organization that deals a lot with foreign affairs called UPF. Really enjoy doing that with the student union here. But there's also this whole network in Lund of these things called nations. And these nations are famous in Lund because they're kind of like these student-led organizations where there's different clubs and activities and kind of the more traditional social life. So not the extracurricular or the kind of the academic route, but more of the party and the fun route that happens in Lund, which is
you need a bit of both.
You need both. It's a work-life balance. Sweden is known for the work-life balance, right? But so the
starts early.
The nations, they're a great group of people. You can get to know Swedes and international students alike. They have many different activities that go on during the year, and different festivals and parties and activities that happen during each week. And they're all very different and very unique. So there's definitely a place for all the students coming to Lund in each of those. Yeah. And then there's this, these groups of associations that work outside the system, and they're doing things kind of on an active basis, maybe connected to academic institutions here at Lund, like the student unions, and things like that. So there's a lot to do, and there's a lot to be introduced to. But it's kind of the thing I would say is you got to keep the student nations kind of it's all part of student life, but the student nations are quite different than the student union. In their content. Yeah,
for sure. So many different directions we can go there. But that was a very good sort of first step, and then we'll dive into the bits and pieces of this. You kind of touched on it already a little bit, but Lund is often voted the best student city in Sweden, and it's famous, as you were saying, for its student life, and many things are unique. Why do you think that is? What is so special about it?
Well, I think one thing that makes Lund unique in its student life is because it's such an international university. It's the number one international university in Sweden, and so it kind of, if you are in the student life, if you are in these organizations that are tackling different issues, if you are at parties and clubs, you're going to meet a student body that is so diverse. And I think that is really what makes it unique to come to Lund, to study at Lund in general, but also for the student life at Lund, is that you can be, in a committee in which you think it's all Swedes, right? But actually it's a European committee, or it's a world committee or something like this, because you have people from literally all around the globe who are taking part and being active in these particular activities. You can be partying and there's someone from, Malaysia on one side and someone from, Eswatini on the other.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, wow, I mean, where can I be in the world that it's this international? Maybe the UN, but Lund University is that's really why it's special for me.
Yeah. That's very interesting. Yeah, that's definitely interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What we talk about, Elliott has already mentioned here, unions, associations, nations, all that. We're going to get into that a little bit, but just to kind of try to puzzle this together, if somebody's listening and they're like, well, how does this actually work? Could you give an idea of what could a typical week look like when you're just maxing out your student life and kind of enjoying yourself outside of your studies?
Well, I mean, so when you come to Lund as a student, you can get this membership called Student Lund, which is basically kind of your gateway ticket into life in Lund as a student. And what that gives you is it gives you access to the different nations. So if there's a club night on Friday night and you want to go, to the pub at your nation with your friends, you have your Student Lund ID and it helps you to get into that club. And it's a membership that you pay for, and most students pay for all year round. But it also gives you access to different activities in the AF Bostader or AF Borgen building. If you're part of any of the organizations there, you can also join. So my weeks usually look like they're quite busy. In between studying, I'm active in UPF, as I've mentioned. So I usually have a committee meeting on a Tuesday night. So I go to that and I meet with my pod radio committee and I work with them on different projects. And Wednesday night, my friends might want to go to a club that's open on Wednesday nights. So we might go to that and hang out and dance a little and have some fun midweek. And then, of course, Thursday, that's usually a pretty, studious day. You're trying to catch up for Friday. Yeah. And then Friday, of course, nightlife in Lund is quite fun. So we might have like a dinner party and then go, to something at a nation afterwards or something like that. But normally there's a lot of things going on. I mean, if you're interested in sports, there's different sports areas you can go to in Lund. If you're interested in like choirs or theater or things like that, you can also do that here. But it's a lot of fun. And you, word of warning, you can overdo it. It's possible. It is possible to overdo it.
Like it.
So you might want to moderate it just a little.
And we do want to put in a disclaimer here that it's still like 40-hour study week.
Oh, there's a lot of student work going on. Yeah, definitely.
The intention. So we're talking about your spare time now.
This is spare time. Yeah, 100%.
I do see that it can be overdone for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
I want to dive into something that you mentioned now when it comes to like particular interests. You were saying if you're into this, if you're into that. Can you describe how that works a little bit? So let's say I'm a prospective student. I'm coming and I'm like super interested in becoming a journalist, or I play some instrument and I really want to keep working with that. And how do you do that? How does that work?
I mean, that's a great question because that's a question that I asked myself when I came here. Well, how do I get involved? What do I do?
Yeah.
And the thing that I've realized is that Facebook is your friend. So if you are interested in some of these things, like you said, I'm a mountain climber. I love to hike or things like this. I would highly recommend that you go on Facebook and you just start kind of typing in like, Lund mountain biking or hiking group and see what comes up, because from that position, from what you see on there, you can kind of get a feel of what's going on, because there's a lot of information that's on the Student Lund website about the different organizations in Student Lund. There's a lot of information on the Lund University website about the different things in student life here in Lund. But there's also kind of this third channel that I would say, which is Facebook, that has a lot of kind of grassroots organic organizations you can get involved in. But the way that what I would recommend is, research on Facebook, but also look on Student Lund and get your membership for Student Lund. Because if there's anything that your mentor group is doing when you get here to Lund, if you're an international student, or if your friends are saying, we're going to go do this, if you have that Student Lund membership, you'll be able to go and do it right away. And it's kind of part and parcel of being a student here at Lund. And I think that's really what I would recommend is just keep active, keep looking, and keep an ear open to what's going on in the community. I mean, you can have friends of friends who are saying, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Yeah. Join them. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And the student Lund card that you were talking about, Elliott, that's kind of what connects all these different associations, organizations, unions, nations, and everything. Exactly. And then you're like a member of it all, more or less it all.
Yeah. And there's so much more. I mean, there's more to see than can ever be seen. I mean, you will never, be a part of everything. And if you do, you won't get any studying done, which is important. So pick what you want to do. Just explore everything, but also remember that Lund has so much to offer that we cannot do it all, and we have to kind of say what is my priority, what is my most the thing I want to explore the most, what skills do I want to work on the most. That's a process that you can take with a student Lund membership.
It's a good place to start, at least, and then you can see how much time and energy you have for other things as well. Exactly. One thing that we often get questions about, and that I wanted to ask you specifically, since you're also from the U.S., is sports. Because, it's so different, obviously, in Sweden compared to in the U.S., where you're used to your university having like their own sports teams and their sports shops and all these activities. So how does that work over here? If you're interested in playing football, what do you do?
So I would say to any American student who's listening, or any student from around the world, Lund can often be very focused on what really matters when you go to university, which is education. And I think that's one strength that I really appreciate coming here to Lund, is that the educational focus is top-notch. But that also means that some things are decentralized. So housing, for example, decentralized, You might be able to go through with the LU accommodation, but a lot of housing is provided through third parties. There is no meal plan if you want to come here. So you have to go and grocery shop for yourself and figure out what meals you want to eat. It's a liberating factor, but it's also can be kind of a thing to consider. It's quite different in the American system, where you're kind of taken through everything with yourself. So when it comes to sports, we unfortunately do not have a mascot here. There is no big tiger or something.
Although they did try once with the lion.
I mean, we could be the Lund Lions. We could try, but there is no American football team. There's no football team. There's none of that because Lund's focus is academia. That doesn't mean that we don't have fun, but just that there's going to be a third party that you can go and watch. And the other thing that's great about being in Lund is that you're kind of at the doorstep of a huge community of people in Copenhagen, in Malmö, in the Skåne region. So if you are super interested in football, even American football, you can go to Malmö and watch a game. There's American football games there. They play there. There's regular football games there where they're playing soccer.
And not just watch, you can also join local teams.
You can also join, And there's a million different clubs that are doing these kind of activities. I recently was picking up tennis. So I was playing tennis with my friends, and we were trying to play doubles and all these things, and we made our own little tournament and stuff like that. But I think these are the things that's so great about Lund. There's so many different opportunities, and you never have to support just one team.
Exactly. But we often say that when we meet prospective students as well, that you can find almost anything related to within the student life that we have. But even if you don't find it, create your own.
Right, that's true.
We had a guy who came a few years ago, a student who was like really into yoga, and he couldn't find the perfect yoga studio, so he just opened one himself.
That's
and
he
just started and got all these students involved. And
that's so cool.
So that's as you were saying, it's a lot of sort of responsibility in a way to be more independent, but also a lot of freedom to create your own path. Both when it comes to studies and your student life.
Definitely. And Sweden in general, I think, is that way.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Take it in your own hands.
So you mentioned that, we talked about some of the differences from your home country, in your case, the U.S. What are some other things that you've noticed when it comes to student life that are very different from the way it's run in the U.S. as an example?
Well, one thing that is quite familiar to me, but might not be familiar to other students from the United States, is that the educational system here in Sweden is quite like informal, I would say, in some ways. So you might address your teachers instead of by last name, you might address them by the first name.
Yeah.
The barrier between the hierarchy of the student and the teacher is often sometimes a little blurry.
Yeah.
Which is quite interesting and which can be quite an experience to learn in, because you almost feel encouraged to go and kind of challenge yourself more than maybe you normally would if you knew exactly what you needed to do to get the right grade.
Yeah.
Grading here is also quite different than the American schools. So when people get C's or when they get, maybe even a D once in a while, it's not the end of the world. It's actually that you did an average job, and you did just okay. There's no B minus, A minus, all that kind of structure.
Yeah.
The B plus is the new C, I guess, is how they describe the U.S. system.
I think we're going to have to do a whole episode on this.
We can do grading, the academic stuff. But
system, I
mean, when it comes to like student life, I think it's so, it's led by the students, which is quite different. All these organizations in Lund, all these committees and different activities and all these things, they're really taken up by passionate students who are seriously motivated by on their own accord to do these particular things. So all the events that I've gone to in the past couple of months being a student here, have been student-led. I mean, we just had the Lundakarnevalen.
Yeah, I was just going to get to that.
This amazing, event that is every 4 years. It's a massive undertaking that puts students in charge of this event. And of course, there are advisors and there are, past members that are, advising these particular students who are running this show. But it's a logistical challenge that also prepares students in their activities of fun for real life.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I think that's
those
one thing.
Those are some proper project management skills
This is
right
real
there.
deal. Yeah. When you're coordinating, hundreds of volunteers to put on a huge carnival that lasts for 2-3 days, that requires, hundreds of thousands of dollars, to put, hundreds of thousands of crowns to put on, it's really quite a spectacle.
Oh yeah.
And there's a lot of systems that are being put into place. But that again is kind of the broader theme is that, all the nations, the unions, the student led organizations, their focus is by students for students. And that's totally different than the United States, I think, in my personal experience.
Yeah. A couple of things I picked up from there. One, you were mentioning the carnival, and just to give people some context, you said it happens every 4 years and so on, and there are usually around 5,000 to 7,000 student volunteers running this show, and about 220,000 visitors just to see the actual carnival parade. Yeah. So it is definitely a massive
It's a huge
project.
event. Yeah.
And it's been going on for a very long time. It's one of the largest traditions in Lund. And that leads me into traditions, which was another thing I wanted to talk to you about, because Lund, as you know, Lund University is from 1666. And when you've been around for that long, you inevitably build up a lot of traditions.
Right.
And the carnival is just one of these
many
massive traditions.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the other ones, like Stabril, Första Maj, the carnival?
I mean, so I think I don't want to go too much in depth in some of these crazy traditions because I'm actually not informed enough to know why some of these crazy things exist, like Valborg and all these crazy things.
What are they doing over there?
What are they doing? So I think what I would say is, if someone is sitting, at home and they're listening to this podcast, maybe you're doing the dishes or something, if you're sitting there going, I wonder what Lund is like, well, you got to come and find out.
Yeah.
You have to come and you have to apply and you have to.
Some things just need to be experienced.
And something, let's leave it a little mysterious because some things I don't even understand why. And some of these things, I mean, they're never, they're always very safe. They're always, everything is taken care of. I never felt in danger when something was going on, some of these crazy events. But I think the thing is they're quite, because the nature of tradition is that sometimes we don't know why we're doing them.
Exactly.
But we're doing them and we feel connected. And I think Lund is kind of in this particular situation, in this particular city, there are so many things that we don't know why we're doing them, but we feel connected to a bigger student body that has been at the university maybe in 1759.
We've always done this. God knows why.
I don't know why we do these things, but we feel integrated into this longer network. And in some ways, it's reassuring to know that when our time here is done, that some of these things will also continue.
Yeah.
And that, some of these crazy events when these kids are walking around looking at the carnival going, what is this mess? Yeah. It's great because then they're going to be going with their kids in 30 years and saying,
exactly.
I was here and I don't know why we do this, but this is why. And that's a tradition in my opinion.
It's comforting in a way as well. I mean, you get connected to history, but it's also comforting to know, just like you said, if I bring my kids here 30 years down the line, they're going to go through the same thing.
Exactly.
That's still going to live on because it's already lived on for 200 years or something.
Well, and one anecdote that I could give you is in the nations, there are sometimes these balls that happen.
Yeah.
So you have these big parties, they're very fancy parties where everyone gets dressed up in these suits. They're very traditional suits with the medals and all these. You've probably seen the photos if you have been on the Lund, University website. You've probably seen these photos of student life. But what's reassuring is to see some of the older members of the nations who are maybe in their 50s and 60s, maybe 70s almost, who are attending these balls, and they are still part of this nation. They still have their medals from when they were in the committee that organized the ball or something like that. And that's really fun to watch, to see these kind of older folks who are also super excited to be involved. When we were in the carnival walking around, there was plenty. There was a whole cycle of life that went to this carnival. You had people in wheelchairs that were being moved. And then there were some people who, at my age, running around having a lot of fun. And I just think that is a testament to how Lund is such an institution in the region, in Sweden and in Scandinavia for what it brings to the table in terms of student life. Big time.
Very interesting. There's so much we can talk about. There was one other thing I wanted to tie back to, and that also actually connects to a tradition, because one tradition that we have is on the 1st of May, the students and the student organizations can grade the vice chancellor. And they give him a speech and they tell him if they feel that he's done a good job. And this is, of course, something very Swedish, the way that students are involved, not only in the fun things, but also in actually running the university.
Big time.
Students are heavily involved in any kind of meeting, any kind of decision making, any major change around the university. It's always, you always have to have student representatives. And this is something that is very unique around the world. And you were talking earlier, Elliott, about unions. And I know that, being out in the world, meeting prospective students, and we mentioned the unions kind of in passing, and they're like, you have student unions?
Right.
What?
Right.
Like, what is
it's
that
amazing.
even?
Yeah.
Can you just give us a little bit of an insight? Like, how does this work? And what does it mean to have like a student union?
Well, okay. This is, again, something when I came to Lund, I was not prepared for how organized the students were, as well as the faculty. Because it's understandable to think, okay, a university that's been around the block for a long time, they probably have a really strong group of faculty members who understand the ropes and the rules of the university, and they run the show. I underestimated how intense the student activity is with that particular point of kind of unifying academia and things. So when it comes to the student unions, I'm part of the social science faculty here at Lund. I'm in that group of teachers and I'm in that group of students. And I take classes with social science faculty all the time. And that also puts me in the social science student union. So that means that with all the other social science students at Lund, people who are studying, things that are much different than what I'm studying, we're all in a group of like-minded students that can lobby different changes that we want to see, or we can also kind of, if we have a complaint against, something that's going on, maybe the literature list of one of our courses is really outdated. We want to change that. Well, what I would do is I would go to the student union, which is a building on site here in Lund, and in one of our campuses, and I would just go talk to somebody and say, I've got this idea. I've got this idea. I want to get, more women of color on the reading list. I want to have more diverse authors.
Yeah.
And they would say, okay, let's take this through the right channels and we can make the change.
Yeah.
And I think for the United States, for students in the United States, we're used to this kind of join in the Union Square, kind of with your posters and all this stuff, and your megaphones, and start yelling at the buildings, and get all angry and upset, and huff and puff, and nothing really gets done.
Yeah.
And you have to lobby and signatures and this and that, and it's a show. But here in Sweden, I mean, we actually can make change because we have organized ourselves in a way that puts us in a powerful position, equally as powerful, I think, as the faculty at Lund, because we're one half of the teaching-student relationship, right?
Exactly.
So I think it's really a powerful thing to be part of, but it also allows us to have avenues and channels to go with solutions and answers to certain problems that we see.
Yeah.
And I think that's Lund in general.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it ties back to the sort of Swedish teaching style as well.
Mm-hmm.
That, I mean, you're here to learn and the staff is here to support you to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Like like they're telling you what to learn, because that's up to you.
Right.
So if it's not working for you, then obviously you need to be able to influence that.
Yeah.
And the vice chancellor and everybody else working here are kind of in service of the students, because that is the whole point. We're running a university.
Yeah.
So therefore, why would he or she make a decision that the students don't approve of? That doesn't make any sense.
Well, and Lund, I mean, it's also, there's so much more oversight in general, and we can get into that, probably in a different pod, but, that's one theme that I felt very comfortable with being at Lund, is that you feel that like your studies matter, like the university cares about your studies. There's systems in place that can kind of get you to be a better student in many different ways. But I think student life supports that as well. I mean, it's a natural kind of nourishment to this social aspect, to growing and to learning at the university level.
Yeah.
And when you kind of get this kind of great student life and you pair it with a strong academic life, you're really going to grow, and you're going to grow quite fast at Lund. And that's how I felt.
Yeah.
I feel so much more prepared to go out into the real world because we've been given opportunities to take activities and things we're passionate about in our own hands.
Yeah.
And it's important.
Well, that's a really good way to wrap up student life, to say you take it in your own hands, because that is really what it's about.
Yeah.
That's also why the university doesn't organize student life, because we're not going to tell you, oh, here, go do this and have fun. Like, you know how you want to have fun, or how you want to grow, or what you want to focus on.
Yeah.
So it really is a way for you to develop that on your own.
Mm-hmm.
That's been great. This has been great, Elliott. I think we have a lot more points for coming episodes. There's so much to talk about, but this, I think, was a good overview and an introduction to a little bit of everything. Student life.
Little taste of everything,
Union life, and a little bit of what it's like to just be in Lund, and differences from where you came from in the U.S.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah. Wrap it up for today. Thank you.
Thanks for listening so much to this episode of the Lund University International Podcast. If you're interested in learning more about Lund University, you can go to our website, lunduniversity.lu.se. You can also follow us on social media, on Facebook and on Instagram. And we look forward to having you listen to our next podcast soon. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.